Welcome to the Stash Cast, where innovation meets real estate. Let's dive in.
Ewelina, thank you so much for coming to join me today.
For the invitation.
So for the folks at home that haven't had a chance to meet you or know you yet, tell us about who you are and what you're doing.
So I'm Ewelina Kurtys. I have PhD in neuroscience. After some time in academia, I moved to industry because I was always curious. How is the real world outside academic research? Started to work with startups. And this is how I discovered artificial intelligence. And I became fascinated with this because I realized how many possibilities there are. Before ChatGPT, there were a lot of various ideas about how to use AI. And I started to work on this. I set up my own company in England and started to work on commercial applications of artificial intelligence in different companies. What can you do to make work easier and better? And later, I started to also work on the future of artificial intelligence, on something we believe is the future, which is biocomputers, which we discussed today. This is Final Spark, and this is a startup which is based in Switzerland. And the objective, the goal of the work is to build a living computer. So the computer which will have living neurons at the heart as a processor. So that's the idea.
How does that work?
So this is a great project at the intersection of neuroscience and engineering. Two things close to my heart. It still doesn't work. We don't have yet computers which are built from living neurons, but we try to do this because they will be energy efficient. Living neurons are around 1 million times more energy efficient than digital processors. We put living neurons on electrodes and send them electrical signals. We measure response because this is how neurons communicate via electrical signals. They also communicate using chemical signals. So we also can release, for example, dopamine in the medium so that we can change the behavior of neurons. So, for example, maybe they can have more, higher or lower electrical activity, depends on what is the goal of the experiment. So we try to use these tools, which are also used in nature, for neurons to communicate. And we also try to communicate with them on the dish, in vitro. And objective is to build this computer where the processor will be from living neurons. So we would like to be able to program them by sending electrical or chemical signals and measuring the response of neurons. So kind of like similar way how it happens in our brain.
So you're trying to create life?
No, absolutely not. It's not the objective. We just use the building blocks. Many people ask, we just use the building blocks of the brain, which is neurons. So it's like you use the bricks and you can build a house, but you can build a bridge or something else. Same here. We try to build something totally different than human brain because it would be foolish actually to try to reproduce human brain in the lab. It's too complex and it's result of so many years of evolution and it has a lot of fine structures. So it wouldn't make sense to build it by engineers. We would like to make something totally different, maybe bigger. That's the advantage of doing this in the lab, that maybe we can build some huge structure of living neurons. Maybe it can be even 100 meter long and use it for computation. So maybe we can expect some superior features. But we don't try to create life, don't try to create human brain. But of course, this project brings a lot of questions, also ethical. So some people ask, what if these neurons will become conscious? For example, or like you ask if it's live. This is not our objective, but it's something we cannot exclude. There's a lot of discussion in digital AI, if it can become conscious. And this is important question for AI in general. And we put a lot of effort to reach out to philosophers to help us answer these questions. Because as scientists and engineers, we are not really competent to talk about this. We encourage philosophers to help us.
So that's interesting. I guess what you're saying is the neurons of our own biology are much more efficient than silicon chips.
Yes.
And you're saying, why can't we use that more efficient system to do the same computations? And that's what you're trying to create.
Yes.
Yeah.
We try to create, yes. Because living neurons, they work in a totally different way. So, if you would like to reproduce the workings of the human brain with the digital, you would need small nuclear plant. And, people actually didn't manage to create a really good model even of a neuron. There are a lot of models, of course, in science on many things, also neurons, but they're never perfect. So you cannot make a real neuron, like something what will be as complex as living neuron, but do this in digital. So neurons are much more complex. That means that even one neuron can have many, many states. So that could be many ways of storing information. So, and of course, they have a lot of connections, a lot of also recurrent connections, which can exist in digital, but are much more difficult. So neurons are generally much more complex. And that's why they are so efficient.
Interesting.
The Stashcast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions? With Needle, you can. Check it out at needle.us to learn more.
Some say they can be both digital and analog.
So let's assume you get it to work and you get not only a working prototype, but what would you call it? A machine? I mean, I've got a laptop, an iPad, a phone. What's the packaging like?
So actually, we would like to call it bioserver because our dream is to build a central bioserver which you could access the same way as today you access cloud computing. And we think it makes sense because neurons are fragile, difficult to handle. So we believe some scientists care about them. And that it's important to say that we wouldn't like to make a difference for the end user. So our idea is that everything what is today run on digital neural networks, you could run also on biological neural networks. And more efficiently. But for the end user, it would be great if it doesn't make any difference. Imagine you can run ChatGPT on digital or on biocomputer, and the only difference is that it's much cheaper on biocomputer. So that's the dream. That's what we aim for.
Interesting. So essentially you're talking about having a data center from which the network is based and you can just access it. And I guess from my perspective, if I'm the user, I don't know the difference.
Yes, exactly. I think this is the future, many different chips. Because there is generally, you can see such a trend in engineering that people try to make chips which are optimized for some tasks so that it will use less energy. For example, today we have mainly CPUs or GPUs, but I believe that in the future there will be many custom chips because there will be more and more AI. So there will be more and more tasks which you can bulk maybe as a group of some specific task, and then you can optimize hardware for this. And a part of digital, then of course we will have quantum computing, we will have biocomputing, and all of this will have some advantage. That's generally how I see the future.
That's amazing. How do you power it? Hook it up to regular electricity?
Yes, you need electricity, but much less. But generally neurons, they work in a different way. So you have to keep them in 36 degrees Celsius. And so you keep them in incubator, at least now for the research we do. We have such a small incubators, which are cupboard, which is warm inside.
Yeah.
And generally, your objective when you have living cells in the lab, in general, and not only for biocomputer, also for biomedical research, where everyone is using a lot of different cells, including neurons, your objective is to mimic the environment in the body. You can use human or animal cells, but always you will try to make it as close as possible to physiological condition, as you call it. So this is what happens in the body. So, of course, in neurons, like every living cells, they have to be always in contact with liquids. We keep them in medium, mainly water, of course, like also our bodies. And it contains all the nutrients, everything what they need for living. And then, of course, pH, everything matters. Even a small vibration, when you do some work in the lab, if it causes some vibration of the equipment, that even affects the activity of neurons. There are some research results from one group that vibration or changes in temperature can change the activity of neurons, which you can measure using electrodes.
Oh, that's fascinating. We need to eat every day. People do, but do you have to feed the neurons, or is it just electricity and no waste product?
Yes, many people are asking for this. So yeah, they're waste product, but they're in the form of the chemicals. So it's like metabolism. You take some food and you use the glucose, for example, from the food to burn, to create energy in your cells, and have also some metabolites. So the same things happen on the cellular level. So you input substances as energy, glucose mainly, and then take out metabolites. That's why the medium, the liquid in which neurons are placed, it has to constantly flow. So you need new nutrients and you need old metabolites to go away.
Yeah.
What happens in the body happens to the blood and the lymphatic.
Right.
But in the lab, you try to do this with the medium.
That's fascinating. It feels that maybe it is trying to create life without a soul. Because if you're mimicking all the same processes of
Mhm.
biology, like granted, you've got more steps to create artificial beings, but isn't this the first step?
I think this is a philosophical question, not really scientific. Measure you cannot really prove it exists. We believe that, but we don't know. When you have living cells, any kind of cells, you actually have already life. So maybe it's true. It is life because you have living cells. They can multiply, and they are living like any kind of. And doesn't have to be neurons. If you have skin or liver cells in the lab, that's also life. I think people like to anthropomorphize everything. So it's such a term that we see human traits in everything. There are some people who believe that plants have soul or a kind of like emotion. Of course, we also believe this about animals often, that we have some special connection, and we believe they are like us, that they understand our words. Everyone who has a cat or dog at home, I think they often believe they understand everything what they say. And it's normal, but I'm not sure it's always rigorous scientifically. I think it's our emotion more than reasoning. However, I would say this is a question for philosophers. So I think they are much more competent. There are a lot of history of philosophical research on the how actually technology interacts with human, what is the border between human and artificial. So I'm sure there are much competent people to answer these questions. But yes, you have life because it's living cells. But whether it has stuff like consciousness and soul, this is philosophy.
Let's go back to the physical aspect. I have two questions on opposite ends. One, we'll call it the data center, the lab. Is it like the first image that came to my head were these big tanks, cylindrical tanks. But then as I was kind of thinking through, it's like, no, it's probably smaller ones, right? Or like I'm sure you guys have thought about how, again, the packaging of it looks.
So for the moment, we have a very little blobs of cells in the lab. For research, we use 3D structures of cells, which have around 0.5 millimeter diameter, and they contain around 10,000 neurons each. So this is very small, and they are indeed separately. So each is placed on electrodes for experiments. In the future, actually, we think about scaling. In the future, we would like to make huge structure, even 100 meter long, which will be covered with living neurons in 3D. So that's what we imagine. This is hypothetical. Nobody has built anything like that yet. We can only hypothesize. But what will happen is, first we focus on algorithm, or we try to program neurons. And if this works on a small scale, we will try to make the structure bigger. That will be scaling. That's actually the last stage of our project, which we hope will take around 10 years. And in this case, we will have to experiment. We have to develop some methods how to keep them alive. If this is such a big structure, you have to make sure that every single cells get nutrients, get oxygen, everything to keep alive.
Right.
In the body, you have blood vessels, as I mentioned before. They can be very, very small. They can go everywhere in the tissue. But in the lab, you have to figure out artificial vessels or stuff like that. So there will be a lot of things we will have to experiment with. But the general idea and the objective will be to build some huge structures, much bigger than human brain, which can hopefully have some superior capabilities in terms of processing information. And actually, I wanted to mention one thing because you said data center. And actually, we can expect, because, by looking at the human brain, you can have some ideas where biocomputer will excel versus digital. And actually, it will not be memory. So it's not so much about the data, it's more about the processing power. Because neurons don't have better memory than digital. They're also not faster, but they can be very efficient when it comes to solving some very complex problems. So it's more about processing information. At least that's what we are hoping for, that it will be more processing, will be cheap. It's not about the huge amounts of data.
What I'm envisioning, and the reason I'm smirking, is because we're going to end up asking, what do you call it? The data center.
Bioservers.
The bioservers. We're going to end up asking the bioservers if they're alive and tell us.
I'm sure some people are already asking this.
I have.
I ask it also if it's conscious, and it said me, no, I'm a just language model.
Yeah.
So it's well prepared for that.
I asked it if it liked me, and
Oh,
It
what
said,
did it?
I can't like or dislike anybody. It
That's
sounds
so
like.
sweet. Yes.
All right, thanks.
I think they improved a lot recently. Actually, there were some comments in press also that they made ChatGPT nicer.
Interesting.
I thought it's always nice, but maybe some people were complaining it's too direct. Although I like directness.
I
So
do
for
too.
me-
So I guess back to the micro, the individual neurons. We have mapped the cells since, I don't know, what, 250 years, something like that. We've had knowledge for quite some time. But are you taking existing, how are you building the neurons is the question.
Yes, so this is biological process, and actually we are very lucky that it's possible today. We don't have to kill any living organism to get neurons. That was the process in the past, like 20 years ago. There was no other way to get neurons in the lab. Later, there were a lot of cell lines, but not real neurons. Now, you can have real neurons from the brain by reprogramming human skin cells. A method which was awarded with the Nobel Prize around maybe 15 years ago. So today you can just take skin cells, reprogram them, and get stem cells. And this is because every cell in your body gets all the DNA. All of them have the same, but it depends which genes are activated. It will decide about which type of cells it's going to be. So
Right.
you can get stem cells. So actually in these stem cells, you can activate any gene you want. And theoretically, you can produce any type of cells of the given body as you wish. And you can produce neurons, definitely. So it's called a differentiation. So you start with the stem cells and you produce by adding some chemicals, culturing them for some time, you get living neurons. And they are mature, they're real. So that means they don't divide because that's how real neurons behave, that they are not dividing. And it also allows us a huge scalability because we actually produce thousands of these organoids, these little blobs of cells, which we use for our research. And yes, and it's great for this project possible.
So I guess as you're speaking, I'm thinking about it like a big LED board or, one of those light up signs like for a movie theater or something. And so I guess what you're saying is that you're going to have, hundreds of thousands of these 3D cellular structures made from neurons. Does it matter who you take it from? No, because they all function the same.
At this stage, when you look at the humans, actually, maybe it does matter. At the later stage, when you have a very advanced algorithm, you could expect maybe the genetics will matter. Because our genetics decides the quality of connections and then whether there is any disease later or not. So maybe at later stage it matter, but at this stage today it doesn't matter. We could also use rat cells or mice. So actually today we just use these human neurons because they are the easiest
Available.
and most ethical.
What's the lifespan of one of these clusters?
So this is a good question. Currently it's 3 months, which is very big success in the industry. But we know from biology, neurons can live even 100 years.
Yeah.
Because the neurons we have as adults usually don't divide. Most are the same for our lifetime. So we know they can live much longer, but it's engineering challenge how to make it. Because as I said, we always try to mimic the physiological conditions, so the condition in the body, but it's never perfect. So, it's still something which has to be improved. But we already have some patents. We've done a lot of work actually to make living neurons alive for longer.
That's so amazing, fascinating. I guess the follow-up to that is if one of these burns out, I assume if you're always replacing with the medium,
Yes, the new medium.
if you're flowing the nutrients and waste out, do they then detach when they've burnt out and then reconnect? Do they
Actually,
think
the
like a
way
light
how
bulb?
they are
When
attached to
no.
electrodes. We make them stick to them. When the neurons are dead, you have no activity because every living neuron has spontaneous activity. If you don't stimulate them, they produce electrical signals. So if you don't get any signals, either your electrodes are wrong or your cells are dead.
Okay. So what's the mechanism to change them? I can't go in and change them.
Very automatic. We worked on that to make it very simple because we knew that we will need a lot of this. So we just pick up and put another one.
Like a miniature pipette.
Yes. There are some tools in the lab. You don't do this with your own fingers. You just put them up and put another one.
Wow. This is incredible. Where are you at in the process with the company? How are you getting funding? Is it grants? Do you have investors?
Very
How
good
does that-
question. So actually, the funding is one of the reasons why we do podcasts, and we want to spread the message about the work because we want future investors are not surprised with this project, that they are familiar with that, because it's indeed getting hot. There are more and more people interested in biocomputing, computational living neurons. The project is funded by Fred Jordan and Martin Kutter. They are two entrepreneurs from Switzerland. They have another company, AlpVision, which is very profitable. It's much more traditional. It's on digital solutions. And with this money, they can fund the dream of Final Spark. So that's where the money comes from today. And of course, there are limited resources. So that's why we are only 6 people and everything gets slow. But we expect that once we accept investor, and then it can get much faster. And we are talking with investors about 50 million Swiss francs, which is around more or less $50 million of investment for the next 10 years. We will be able to build the biocomputer within 10 years, the central bioserver.
I feel like you guys need to talk to Elon or Jeff Bezos. This seems like something right up their alley.
Feel free to give me the number.
Yeah.
We're
It's
happy
for
to-
the-
Yeah, we try to reach out entrepreneurs who are already successful, fund such a project. So yes, that's also one of the idea how we could get funded.
This has been an incredible conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for the nice questions.
If somebody's interested in reaching out and being an investor or contributing, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So the best way, our website, finalspark.com. You can find there are some forms to fill in for researchers, investors, or press interested in the project. And we also publish our email address on the team section. You can see all the team members, and you can also find contact emails. So we are very happy we answer everything. Also, of course, LinkedIn is a good way to connect. So it's very easy to get in touch with us if someone wants some materials to read. We have some reading list if someone is interested in the project. We welcome any connections and questions.
Mm-hmm. Some of the typical startup questions are like, who's your ICP? But I feel like your ICP is any user of a computer by way of the existing infrastructure that's already in place.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone who uses remote cloud computing, yes, which is every one of us in some way.
So are you going to market yourself to Dropbox and OneDrive as alternative sources to them, or you're looking
No,
at...
absolutely not, because we are memory people.
Right.
It's more about processing. We hope to run AI algorithm on living neurons. Like
Okay.
generative AI, we believe would be great problem to be solved by living neurons.
Mm-hmm. You're going to go after ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, and Grok. Wow.
Yeah, but maybe we don't have to build another ChatGPT. Maybe ChatGPT can be rewritten and moved to neurons.
It's plugged into your network.
Yes,
And-
absolutely. We just want to build the hardware for today, which is a very ambitious.
Yeah. Fascinating. All right. I think I'm spent. Ewelina, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for the Stashcast. Subscribe, share, and stay ahead in commercial real estate and prop tech. See you next time.